Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of the View co-host Sonny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases.
For more, we go to our chief Sonny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
The arrival of Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld with their sardonic flamethrowers converted Sonny Hostin's bad day into a full-fledged comedy roast. You won't believe the extent of the mayhem in the courtroom. The humiliation she endured after her husband's $450 million court fiasco was simply the appetizer. Sonny, let's say her quiet could win an Oscar, did not hold back. Tyrus did not hold back, and Gutfeld did not flinch.
About 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, you know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, you know, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity and she had no idea who she was.
For years, Sonny Hostin has portrayed herself as the daytime television equivalent of the Supreme Court. She is ethically superior, but she also provides phrases rather than merely opinions. If you make one bad choice, you'll be kicked out of brunch. The self-described queen of legal purity, however, was involved in a $450 million courtroom fiasco this week that involved her own spouse.
Man that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racist on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, you know, Emily.
As if they were auditioning for a roast of Mount Olympus you haven't seen in years, Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld used their sarcasm to their advantage. Bring on the popcorn. It's all about privacy and due process now that her spouse is allegedly involved in a financial scandal that makes FTX seem like a bake sale. Furious, angry, shocked, and doing whatever it takes to get the upper hand on a talk show that is more of an emotional cage match than genuine conversation, Sonny has made a career out of insulting people on TV.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sonny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sonny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sonny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from...
When it comes to her own spouse, the loudest legal voice on the scene has suddenly realized how important it is to be quiet. However, there is only barely veiled derision and righteous wrath when someone else is being attacked. You're about to take the stage. Bravo. Two men who will not miss the chance to enjoy this hypocrite sandwich are Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld. Together, they possess enough sarcasm to govern a small country.
Makes Sonny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull.
There is no better time than now. Tyrus might as well have brought marshmallows to roast over the flaming remains of Sonny's credibility, and Gutfeld, who has made a career out of exposing media hypocrisy, almost threw a party on air with the precision of a sniper and the skill of a stand-up comic. Let's talk about this $450 million issue that has generated a lot of social media conversation and news. Sonny's husband is accused of everything from possible fraud to financial mismanagement, but who's counting? Compared to a malfunctioning Alexa, Sonny has little to say about legal responsibility. It is said that Sonny's spouse is at the core of a legal nightmare so vast that Enron seems like a spelling error. The fact that this woman, who once earned a living by dissecting other people's legal issues like a hawk circling roadkill when a Republican is sued, unplugged her inner prosecutor and replaced it with a dial tone is not only extremely humorous, but the uproar is enormous. Sunny has already covered half of her introductory remarks, so speculation is inappropriate when her lawn unexpectedly catches fire. Greg, it's basically performance art, not just irony. Gutfeld wasted no time in launching into a segment that was less news commentary and more roast war.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So,
The primary concept, if hypocrisy were a game, you might just hear Tyrus honing his rhetorical tool as Sunny, the recent Olympic champion, examined the double standard with the eagerness of a child unwrapping Christmas presents. He really did swing it. Tyrus will undoubtedly be there with a velvet pillow to pick up the Queen of Condescension's crown when it is lost due to a scandal of this magnitude. Tyrus, who never backs down, delivered zingers with the easy assurance of someone who has chosen to strike back after watching too much daytime television. Not only did he expose the scandal, but he also exposed the conceit, the self-righteousness, and the resulting loss of credibility. Keep in mind that the last panel is co-hosted by The View. Joy, those bright lights of progressive rage, changed from passionate defenders of justice to a chorus of silence in record time. Bahar seemed to have seen a ghost, usually loud enough to be heard in the neighboring zip code. When Sunny's name appears on the court docket, the outrage meter appears to run out of batteries. The same people who once threw a multi-segment outburst over a Republican politician's mispronounced word. Goldberg, who is usually bubbling with moral lectures, barely managed to shrug.
Sure, all that, and the price of butter. Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, asking that question, it might have been a closer election. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be. This should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last. They call them Hitler. They call these things. America rejected them, and instead of coming back and saying we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball.
But even if it's convenient, a $450 million lawsuit involving one of their own makes things suddenly very complex and complicated. Memes that did more than just make fun of her. They burned her, were sprouting on Twitter as social media took off like wildfire. Ever the opportunist, Greg Gutfeld used the circumstance to further his argument. For a show founded on truth and transparency, the perspective is suddenly developing a very selective form of laryngitis. He wrote in delightful deadpan. Tyrus continued by mocking the notion of Sunny offering viewers legal counsel while reportedly assisting in the draughting of claims of her husband's misinterpreted financial dealings. The tendency of public figures to demand accountability for everyone but themselves is known as media elitism. Only when you're gazing down, rather than when it's slipping under your feet, is it enjoyable to be on the moral high ground. Maybe the only thing more confusing than the charges is Sunny's moral compass, which now spins faster than a politician in a polygraph chair.
time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner. Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise.
Really?
You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any, is she said, well, I guess that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
Cherry on top. In what may have been the most beautiful irony that television has seen in years, Gutfeld concluded his broadcast. Innocently, he asked Sunny if she would want to appear on his show and discuss the need of accountability. Tyrus just leaned in, glanced at the camera, and offered one of those recognizable smirks that say, "We told you so," despite the invitation's evident irony and sarcasm. The View acted as though it never happened. Not a single sentence, not a single segment. They could talk about Taylor Swift's past relationships for 20 minutes, but they wouldn't bring up the $450 million elephant that is destroying Sunny's personal life. But this dispute is about more than simply Sunny. It's a mirror of the larger parade of hypocrisy being paraded by the mainstream media. Until someone points out that their own principles are printed on toilet paper, they cite laws as if they were scripture. These talking heads enjoy presenting themselves as benefactors of justice. But when their own skeletons are exposed, it becomes a theater of the ludicrous.
It's not even that. In The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sonny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back.
It's a double-decker of irony with a dash of denial, not just a double standard. Sunny may have to do more than simply sulk during commercial breaks, as the fallout has only just begun and more information is expected to come to light. Sunny's supporters contend that she is not responsible for her husband's behavior. That would seem reasonable on paper, but she is the same woman who, like a CSI political hypocrite, examined the families of her adversaries. Maybe a short vacation, a statement in the open, or just more of her cocky look when she's sleeping. Don't expect self-awareness if you tuned in expecting it. These are the kinds of folks who could blame Republicans despite their own inconsistencies. As likely as Sunny submitting her husband's bail documents on live television is the notion that they will contemplate, acknowledge their hypocrisy, or even chuckle at their own ridiculousness. In any case, the damage to credibility is now irreparable. The View was never exactly a bastion of journalistic ethics. Let's face it, but this incident simply ripped away what little trust it did have.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
That was the time for strategic silence, according to Sunny Host, the queen of interruptions, legal monologues, and unwelcome law school reenactments. If there was a mute button on The View for embarrassing scandals, she hit it as if her reputation depended on it, which in this case it did. The sane woman who could filibuster her way through 7 seconds of film of a squirrel sneezing on Capitol Hill oddly lost the ability to speak when the topic shifted to a famous $450 million courtroom drama starring spouse pigs recently founded a startup. The self-serving cross-examinations and legalese that no one asked for had vanished, and the warrior for eternal justice was unexpectedly as admirers watched in amazement as Sunny, the human screensaver, perfected the art of subtly blinking and rearranging her note cards into the shape of a legal plea deal. It was like seeing a defense attorney play charades during a tax audit. With each suspicious gulp from her mug, each sidelong glance, and each twitchy shuffle, she yelled, "Please don't ask me about the giant felon-shaped elephant tap dancing through this segment." She can go from nodding absently at a legal conference to dozing off so deeply that you would believe she was counting ceiling tiles for legal counsel. With her shoulders rigid enough to cut deli meat and her arms crossed tighter than a tax loophole, her body language was, let's say it, courtroom mime.
Is shaming descendants of this. Will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Sunny sat still, as though she had just seen her husband's bail terms inscribed on her wrists, in between Whoopi's eye rolls and Joy's digressions. The best part was when the discussion became heated and any topic strayed even a little from fraud, corruption, or humiliation in front of others. Sunny, with a look on her face that suggested she was trying to disappear telepathically, suddenly took an interest in looking into the abyss. The spoiler alert didn't work. Viewers and Twitter both saw it. When Greg Gutfeld saw it, he didn't even blink. In fact, Sunny's usual strategy is to cut someone off mid-sentence and remark, "Actually, that's not how due process works," But now the only thing she's lawyering up is her facial expression because, oops, it turns out the due process in question is happening to her own husband. Additionally, the interruptions that formerly made her the loudest person in the room have now become the ghosts of her judicial credibility. She sits and blinks, drinking from that enormous mug as though it were loaded with disappearing cream. Fans anxiously await her outburst, hoping that she will yell, "Objection!" When she looks in the mirror. The silence isn't perfect. There is a desperate attempt to ignore, distract, and outlank a scandal that is just too big to hide.
Anna went in a different direction, but I love the fact that, Manny is younger and he's
How
very
much younger is it?
Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he? Like a month or a year or 10 years or 5 years?
It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me. I think that it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He
Exactly.
throws the garbage out.
Right.
He does the heavy.
I apologize, Sunny, but you are still unable to see karma in a different light. In a culture where injustice is pervasive and finger-pointing has become a professional sport, it is not just satisfying but almost soothing to see the mighty falter. America didn't understand it needed the catharsis that Gutfeld and Tyrus provided. Given Sunny's recuperation, the host scandals on The View are probably going to continue for a while. She might even turn this into a teaching moment and give a TED talk titled "When Justice Hits Close to Home," if people vote the right way. The gavel will eventually swing back, and in Sunny's case, it did so with enough force to remove the smug from her highlight reel. Until then, the internet will keep laughing, the memes will keep spreading, and Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld will keep using their punchlines to circle a hypocrisy like vultures. We're eager to see how Sunny manages daytime ratings if this is how she handles legal emergencies. Thus, remember that even the strongest voices can choke on their own script when Tyrus and Greg Gutfeld are holding the punchlines and the receipts the next time The View gives another moral lecture.